In this chapter, we have a lot of material to cover, including both traditional and green energy, how they are being used, and where they are found. Let's get going. Fossil energy sources, including oil, coal, and natural gas, are non-renewable resources that formed when prehistoric plants and animals died and were gradually buried by layers of rock. Over millions of years, different types of fossil fuels formed depending on what combination of organic matter was present, how long it was buried, and what temperature and pressure conditions existed as time passed. Today, fossil fuel industries drill or mine for these energy sources, burn them to produce electricity, or refine them for use as fuel for heating or transportation. Over the past 20 years, nearly three-fourths of human-caused emissions came from the burning of fossil fuels. The Energy Department maintains emergency petroleum reserves, ensures responsible development of America's oil and gas resources, and executes natural gas regulatory responsibilities. In addition, scientists at the Energy Department's national labs are developing technologies to reduce carbon emissions and ensure fossil energy sources play a role in America's clean energy future. Coal is primarily used as fuel to generate electric power in the United States. In coal-fired power plants, bituminous coal, subbituminous coal, and lignite is burned. The heat produced by the combustion of the coal is used to convert water into high-pressure steam, which drives a turbine, which produces electricity. In 2019, about 23% of all electricity in the United States was generated by coal-fired power plants, according to the U.S. Energy Information Administration. Certain types of bituminous coal can also be used in making steel. Coal used for steel making needs to be high in carbon content and low in moisture, ash, sulfur, and phosphorus content. Coal that meets these specifications is known as metallurgical coal. Coal also has a myriad of other uses, including in cement production, carbon fibers and foams, medicines, tars, synthetic petroleum-based fuels, and home and commercial heating. Coal is a combustible black or brownish black sedimentary rock with a high amount of carbon and hydrocarbons. Coal is classified as a non-renewable energy source because it takes millions of years to form. Coal contains the energy stored by plants that lived hundreds of millions of years ago in swampy forests. Layers of dirt and rock covered the plants over millions of years. The resulting pressure and heat turned the plants into the substance we call coal. There are several areas in the United States where coal can be found. The Appalachian coal region includes Alabama, eastern Kentucky, Maryland, Ohio, Pennsylvania, Tennessee, Virginia, and West Virginia. About 27% of the coal produced in the United States came from the Appalachian coal region. West Virginia is the largest coal producing state in the region and the second largest coal producing state in the United States. Underground mines supplied 82% of the coal produced in the Appalachian region. Underground mines in the Appalachian region accounted for 57% of U.S. total underground mine production. The interior region, coal region, includes Arkansas, Illinois, Indiana, Kansas, Louisiana, Mississippi, Missouri, Oklahoma, Texas, and western Kentucky. About 16% of the U.S. coal was mined in the interior coal region. Illinois was the largest coal producer in the interior region, accounting for 39% of the region's coal production and about 6% of the total U.S. coal production. Underground mines supplied 67% of the region's coal production and surface mines supplied 33%. The western coal region includes Alaska, Arizona, Colorado, Montana, New Mexico, North Dakota, Utah, Washington, and Wyoming. About 57% of the total U.S. coal production was mined in the western coal region. Wyoming, the largest coal producing state in the United States, produce 41% of the total U.S. coal production and 73% of the coal mined in the Western Coal region. 7 of the top 10 largest U.S. coal producing mines were in Wyoming, and all of those mines are surface mines. Surface mines produce 91% of the coal in the Western Coal region. Strip mining, also known as surface mining, involves the stripping away of earth and rocks to reach the coal underneath. If a mountain happens to be standing in the way of a coal seam within, it will be blasted or leveled, effectively leaving a scarred landscape and disturbing ecosystems and wildlife habitat. As part of the process of clearing the way for a coal mine, trees are cut down or burned, plants uprooted, and the topsoil scraped away. This results in the destruction of the land where it can no longer be used for planting crops and soil erosion. The loosened topsoil can be washed down by rains and the sediments get into rivers, streams, and waterways. Downstream, they can kill the fish and plant life and block river channels, which cause flooding. The minerals from the disturbed earth can seep into groundwater and contaminate waterways with chemicals that are hazardous to our health. An example would be acid mine drainage. Acidic water can flow out of an abandoned coal mine. Mining has exposed rocks which contain the sulfur-bearing minerals pyrite. This mineral reacts to air and water to form sulfuric acid. When it rains, the diluted acid gets into rivers and streams and can even seep into underground sources of water. Underground mining allows coal companies to dig for coal deeper in the ground. The problem is that huge amounts of earth and rock are brought up from the bowels of the earth. These mining wastes can become toxic when they are exposed to air and water. Examples of toxins are mercury, arsenic, fluorine, and selenium. The amount of dust generated in mining operations can be carried to nearby towns by the wind. These dust particles can cause all kinds of health problems for humans who are exposed to it. Coal mine methane emissions from underground mining are often caught and used as town fuel, chemical feedstock, vehicle fuel, and industrial fuel, but very rarely is everything captured. Methane is less prevalent in the atmosphere as compared to carbon dioxide, but it is 20 times more powerful as a greenhouse gas. Fires from underground mines can burn for centuries. These fires release smoke into the atmosphere, smoke which contains carbon dioxide, carbon monoxide, methane, nitrous oxide, sulfur dioxide, and other toxic greenhouse gases. Those who live in the area are also exposed to these toxic fumes as well. Coal dust inhalation can cause black lung disease. Miners and those who live in nearby towns are the most affected. Cardiopulmonary disease, hypertension, COPD, and kidney disease are found in higher than normal rates in people who live near coal mines. Researchers demonstrated that toxic dust from mountaintop removal promotes the growth of lung cancer cells in people living nearby. All of these negative effects force people to move to other places as their air and water gets polluted, and expanding coal miners make use of more and more of their habitat. The United States uses many different energy sources and technologies to generate electricity. The sources and technologies have changed over time, and some are used more than others. The three major categories for electricity generation are fossil fuels such as coal, natural gas, and petroleum, nuclear energy, and renewable energy sources. Most electricity is generated with steam turbine using fossil fuels, nuclear, biomass, geothermal, and solar thermal energy. Other major electricity generation technologies include gas turbines, hydro turbines, wind turbines, and solar photovoltaics. Coal was the third largest energy source for the United States electricity generation in 2022 at about 18%. Nearly all coal-fired power plants use steam turbines. A few coal-fired plants convert coal to gas for use in gas turbines to generate electricity. The amount of coal that exists in the United States is difficult to estimate because it is buried underground. In 1975, the U.S. Geological Survey, or USGS, published the most comprehensive national assessment of U.S. coal resources, which indicated that as of January 1st, 1974, coal resources in the United States totaled 4 trillion short tons. Although the USGS has conducted more recent regional assessments of U.S. coal resources, a new national level assessment of U.S. coal resources has not been conducted since then. Based on U.S. coal production in 2021 of about 0.577 billion short tons, the recoverable coal reserves would last about 435 years, and recoverable reserves at producing mines would last about 21 years. The actual number of years that those reserves will last depends on changes in production and reserve estimates. As of December 31st of 2021, estimates of total world proved recovery reserves of coal were about 1,161 billion short tons, or 1.161 trillion short tons, and 5 countries had about 75% of the world's proved coal reserves, as you can see on the map. Petroleum, also called crude oil, is a fossil fuel. Like coal and natural gas, petroleum was formed from the remains of ancient marine organisms such as plants, algae, and bacteria. Over millions of years of intense heat and pressure, these organic remains or fossils transformed into carbon-rich substances we rely on as raw materials for fuel and a wide variety of products. Oil or petroleum is a readily combustible fossil fuel that is composed mainly of carbon and hydrogen and thus known as a hydrocarbon. The formation of oil takes a significant amount of time, with oil beginning to form millions of years ago. 70% of oil deposits existing today were formed in the Mesozoic age around 252 to 66 million years ago. 20% were formed in the Cenozoic age around 65 million years ago, and only 10% were formed in the Paleozoic age around 541 to 252 million years ago. This is likely because the Mesozoic age was marked by a tropical climate with large amounts of plankton in the ocean. The formation of oil begins in warm, shallow seas that were present on Earth millions of years ago. In these oceans, extremely small dead organic matter, classified as plankton, falls to the floor of the ocean. This plankton consists of animals called zooplankton or plants called phytoplankton. This material then lands on the ocean floor, mixes with inorganic material that enters the ocean by rivers. In this sediment on the ocean floor then forms oil over many years. The energy in oil initially comes from the sun and is energy from sunlight that is trapped in chemical form by dead plankton. The United States became the world's top crude oil producer in 2018 and maintained the lead position through 2021. U.S. oil refineries obtain crude oil produced in the United States and other countries. Although total U.S. crude oil production generally declined between 1985 and 2008, annual production increased nearly each year from 2009 through 2019, reaching the highest maximum amount on record in 2019. More cost-effective drilling technology helped to boost production, especially in Texas, North Dakota, Oklahoma, New Mexico, and Colorado. U.S. crude oil production declined in 2020 and 21 mainly because of the effects of COVID-19 pandemic on the economy. In the United States, companies produce crude oil on private and public land and offshore waters. Most of these companies are independent producers, and they usually operate only in the United States. The other companies, often referred to as major oil companies, have many hundreds or thousands of employees and operate in many countries. Examples of major U.S. oil companies are Chevron and ExxonMobil. Conventional oil is produced using drilling techniques that utilize the natural pressure of an underground reservoir. Production of a conventional oil has 4 main phases. First, there is exploration. Geological exploration is a series of technologies that are used by geologists and geophysicists to predict the location and extent of underground oil. Next comes drilling. Once a reservoir has been located with sufficient certainty, a drilling rig is used to bore a hole from the surface to the oil reservoir. Piping is then inserted, allowing the oil to be brought to the surface. Some of the oil in the reservoir will be produced using the natural pressure of the reservoir. Then there is the pumping phase. Gradually, the pressure of the well will decrease as oil is produced. At this point, a pump will be connected to allow the remaining oil to be extracted. Finally, there is the abandoning phase. After all the economically viable oil has been extracted from the well is filled with cement to prevent any hydrocarbons from escaping, and a special cap is placed over it to protect the area. Crude oil is used to make the petroleum products we use to fuel airplanes, cars, and trucks, to heat homes, and to make products such as medicines and plastics. Although petroleum products make life easier, finding, producing, and moving crude oil may have a negative effect on the environment. Technological advances in exploration, production, and transportation of oil and enforcement of safety and environmental laws and regulations help to avoid and reduce these effects. Most oil spills are the results of accidents at oil wells or on pipelines, ships, trains, and trucks that move oil from wells to refineries. Oil spills contaminate soil and water and may cause devastating explosions and fires. Oil wells are plugged when they become uneconomic, and the area around the well may be restored. Some old offshore oil rigs are tipped over and left on the seafloor in a rig to reefs program. Within a year after a rig is toppled, barnacles, coral, sponges, clams, and other sea creatures cover the rig. These artificial reefs attract fish and other marine life, and they increase fish populations and recreation fishing and diving opportunities. Health effects from exposure to petroleum products vary depending on the concentration of the substance and the length and time that one is exposed. Breathing petroleum vapors can cause nervous system effects such as headache, nausea, and dizziness, and respiratory irritation. Very high exposure can cause coma or death. Liquid petroleum products which come in contact with the skin can cause irritation, and in some cases can be absorbed through the skin. Chronic exposure to petroleum products may affect the nervous system, blood, and kidneys. Gasoline contains small amounts of benzene, a known human carcinogen. Whether specific petroleum products can cause cancer in humans is not known. However, there is evidence that occupationally exposed people in the petroleum refining industry have an increased risk of skin cancer and leukemia. In its latest statistical review of world energy, British Petroleum estimated the world had 1.7297 trillion barrels of crude oil remaining at the end of 2018. That was up from 1.7275 trillion barrels a year earlier and 1.4938 trillion barrels in 2008. In 1998, the world had 1.1412 trillion barrels remaining reserves. So as demand has continued to grow consistently over the last 20 years, so has production, and counterintuitively, so have global oil reserves. Yet in that same statistical review, British Petroleum said that these higher reserves would last us for just another 50 years, another metric oil companies use to measure their business sustainability. Natural gas is a fossil fuel energy source. Natural gas contains many different compounds. The largest component of natural gas is methane, a compound with one carbon atom and 4 hydrogen atoms. Natural gas also contains smaller amounts of natural gas liquids and non-hydrocarbon gases such as carbon dioxide and water vapor. We use natural gas as a fuel to make materials and chemicals. Millions to hundreds of millions of years ago, the remains of plants and animals such as diatoms built up in thick layers on the Earth's surface and ocean's floors, sometimes mixed with sand, silt, and calcium carbonate. Over time, these layers were buried under sand, silt, and rock. Pressure and heat changed some of this carbon in hydrogen-rich material into coal, some into oil, and some into natural gas. So all three, coal, petroleum, and natural gas, are interrelated in terms of them being formed from the burying and then heat and pressure over millions of years. According to U.S. crude oil and natural gas proved reserves year-end 2021, as of December 30th, 2021, U.S. total natural gas proved reserves estimated as wet gas totaled about 625.4 trillion cubic feet. This volume was a 32% increase from the estimated 473 trillion cubic feet of proved resources at the end of 2020. The dry natural gas portion of these reserves is about 589 trillion cubic feet, a 32% increase from the 445 trillion cubic feet of dry gas reserves in 2020. Based on the latest available well production data and information from federal and state government agencies, industries, and academia, as of January 1st, 2021, the United States had a total of about 2,973 trillion cubic feet of technically reservable resources, which consist of proved reserves and unproved resources of dry natural gas. Gasoline is a fuel made from crude oil and other petroleum liquids. Gasoline is mainly used in vehicle engines. Petroleum refineries and blending facilities produce finished motor gasoline for retail sale at gasoline fueling stations. Petroleum refineries mostly produce gasoline blending components called gasoline blend stocks, which require blending with other liquids to make finished motor gasoline. Most finished motor gasoline is produced at blending terminals where gasoline blend stocks, finished gasoline, and fuel ethanol are blended to produce finished motor gasoline in different grades and formulations. Some companies also have detergents and other additives blended with their gasoline before delivery to their retail outlets. Blending terminals are more numerous and widely dispersed than petroleum refineries, and they have equipment for filling tanker trucks that transport finished motor gasoline to retail outlets. Most of the finished motor gasoline now sold in the United States contains about 10% fuel ethanol by volume. Ethanol is added to gasoline mainly to meet the requirements of the Renewable Fuel Standard, which is intended to reduce greenhouse gas emissions and the amount of oil that the United States imports from other countries. Some companies have different names for these grades of gasoline, such as regular, unleaded, mid-grade, medium, super premium, or super premium, but they all indicate the octane rating, which is the anti-knock property of gasoline. No grade of motor gasoline now sold in the U.S. contains lead. The lowest octane rating gasoline is usually the least expensive. Vehicle manufacturers recommend the grade of gasoline for use in each model of their vehicles. In addition to the grade of motor gasoline, the formulation of gasoline may differ depending on the location where it is sold or the season of the year. Federal and state air pollution control programs that aim to reduce carbon monoxide, smog, and air toxins require oxygenated, reformulated, and low volatility gasoline. Some areas of the country are required to use specially formulated gasoline to reduce certain emissions, and the formulation may change during winter and summer months. These area-specific requirements mean that gasoline is not the same everywhere. Gasoline produced for sale in one area of the United States might not be authorized for sale in another area. Modern high-volume hydraulic fracturing is a technique used to enable the extraction of natural gas or oil from shale and other forms of tight rock, in other words, impermeable rock formations that lock in oil and gas and make fossil fuel difficult to get to. Large quantities of water, chemicals, and sand are blasted into these formations at pressures high enough to crack the rock, allowing the once trapped gas and oil to flow to the surface. It involves blasting fluid deep below the Earth's surface to crack sedimentary rock formations. This includes shale, sandstone, limestone, and carbonate to unlock natural gas and crude oil reserves. The process begins with the drilling of long vertical or angled well that can extend a mile or more into the earth. As the well nears the rock formation where the natural gas or oil lies, drilling then gradually turns horizontal and extends as far as thousands of feet. Steel pipes called casings are inserted into the well, and the space between the rock and the casing is fully or partially filled with cement. Small holes are made in the casing with a perforating gun, or the well is constructed with pre-perforated pipe. Fracking fluid is then pumped in at a high pressure to create new fractures or open up existing ones in the surrounding rock. This allows the oil or gas to flow to the surface for gathering, processing, and transportation, along with contaminated wastewater that is stored in pits or tanks or disposed of in underground wells. Fossil fuels are a non-renewable resource, and with limited reserves, added with more energy-hungry population, will lead to ultimately running out of oil, gas, and coal. Only by offsetting the demand for fossil fuels with alternative energy sources will we be able to sustain our way of life. While significant technological advances are making renewables viable, a meaningful transition will only come when they are fully accepted and adopted by society. Raising awareness of the importance of switching to renewable energies, their benefits, and their potential is central to ensuring that the public and key stakeholders appreciate, accept, and support their adoption. We will now take a look at green sources of energy, including wind, solar, hydro, and nuclear power sources. We will look at how they work and the pros and cons of each. Let's get started. Renewable energy is energy derived from natural sources that are replenished at a higher rate than are consumed. Sunlight and wind, for example, are such sources that are constantly being replenished. Renewable energy sources are plentiful and all around us. Generating renewable energy creates far lower emissions than burning fossil fuels. Transitioning from fossil fuels, which currently account for the lion's share of emissions, to renewable energy is key to addressing the climate crisis. Renewables are now cheaper in most countries and generate 3 times more jobs than fossil fuels. Solar radiation is light, also known as electromagnetic radiation, that is emitted by the sun. While every location on Earth receives some sunlight over a year, the amount of solar radiation that reaches any one spot on Earth's surface varies. Solar technologies capture this radiation and turn it into useful forms of energy. The more we can capture the benefits of solar energy, the less we will rely on fossil fuels. Adding a solar energy systems to your home allows you to tap into these solar energy advantages, such as 1. Solar energy is a renewable energy source and reduces carbon emissions. Solar energy is a renewable energy source, meaning you don't ever use it up. Solar energy is clean. It creates no carbon emissions or other heat-trapping greenhouse gases. It avoids the environmental damage associated with mining or drilling for fossil fuels. Furthermore, solar energy uses little to no water, unlike power plants that generate electricity using steam turbines. A second advantage is solar energy can reduce your home's electricity bill. A solar energy system for your home can reduce your reliance on the grid and help you save on your electricity bill. Some owners of residential solar energy systems may have excess power that they can sell to the utility. Instead of paying a utility for electricity, homeowners get paid by the utility. You may not have to buy an entire solar energy system to cut your home's electricity bill. Simply choose solar lights, lights that are powered by the sun instead of your home's electrical systems to help save money. A third advantage is that solar power can get you money back through the solar renewable energy credits. Some states offer solar renewable energy certificates. Each one represents a megawatt of an hour of electricity generated through solar energy. Electricity suppliers buy these certificates to satisfy their state's renewable portfolio standard, a requirement that a certain amount of their renewable energy come from solar. You can sell your solar renewable energy credits for your system's output, which is another way to earn money from your investment. Fourth, homes with solar panels installed may improve home value. Home buyers will likely pay more for a house with solar panels installed. Considering solar energy pros and cons, the savings on electricity bills and the money earned selling power back to the utility all count in the plus column. Residential solar energy systems are highly valued and can increase a home's resale value. The property value of a home with solar panels can be worth up to $15,000 more than its neighbors. Solar systems are fairly easy to install and require very little maintenance. Both are handled by your solar provider, if you opt for a solar lease or a power management agreement. Consider this as you ask yourself if solar energy is worth it. A fifth advantage is solar panels have a low maintenance cost. Solar panels are easy to maintain and they have no moving parts that wear out over time. Just keep them clean and in good physical condition to keep them working properly. Between their low maintenance costs and average lifespan of 25 years, it can be easy to get your money's worth when investing in solar panels. Finally, the last advantage is solar energy can generate electricity in any climate. Solar energy systems can generate electricity in any climate. One of the disadvantages of solar energy is that it is subject to the temporary weather disruption. Cloudy days reduce the amount of electricity you produce. Cold, however, doesn't affect productivity. Snowfall can actually help your solar system as the snow cleans the panels as it melts and sun is reflected off the snow increases the amount of light hitting your panels. The result is more electricity production. Photovoltaic materials and devices convert sunlight into electrical energy. A single photovoltaic device is known as a cell. An individual photovoltaic cell is usually small, typically producing about 1 or 2 watts of power. These cells are made of different semiconductor materials and are often less than a thickness of 4 human hairs. In order to withstand the outdoors for many years, cells are sandwiched between protective materials in combination of glass and or plastics. To boost the power output of photovoltaic cells, they are connected together in chains to form larger units known as modules or panels. Modules can be used individually or several of them can be connected to form arrays. One or more arrays is then connected to the electrical grid as part of a complete photovoltaic system. Because of this modular structure, photovoltaic systems can be built to meet almost any electrical power need, small or large. Photovoltaic modules and arrays are just part of the photovoltaic system. Systems also include mounting structures that point panels towards the sun, along with the components that take the direct current or DC electricity produced by modules and convert it into alternating current or AC electricity used to power all of the appliances in your home. The disadvantages of solar energy are becoming fewer as the industry advances and grows, creating economies of scale. Technological advances are helping solar go mainstream. Here are some of the disadvantages of solar energy. First, the high initial cost of installing panels. The most commonly cited solar energy disadvantage, cost, is declining as the industry expands. The initial cost to buy and install the equipment is not cheap. Still, if cost is an issue, leasing options may reduce the amount of your initial outlay. If you do not choose to buy, you will need to live in your home for a number of years before the system pays for itself. It's a long-term investment better suited to property owners than renters. Second, solar energy storage is expensive. One of the disadvantages of solar energy, the temporary decline in energy production during bad weather, has been a major issue. Days with low solar energy, however, are having less of an effect due to advances in battery technology. Old technology for storing solar energy, like lead acid batteries, are being replaced by alternatives. Lithium ion batteries offer greater power at a lower cost. Nickel based batteries have an extremely long life. New technologies like flow batteries promise scale and durable power storage. The third disadvantage is that solar doesn't work for every roof type. Not every room will work well with solar panels. Orientation matters. If your roof doesn't face the sun, you won't be able to capture enough solar energy. Roofs that angle into the sun tend to work better than flat roofs. Roofing materials like asphalt shingles, metal, and tiles make installing panels easier. If your room is made with other materials, installation may be more expensive. Part of what makes energy efficient roofs is their ability to support solar panels. Finally, the last disadvantage, solar panels are dependent on sunlight. It's obvious that solar panels need sunlight to generate electricity. They won't produce electricity at night when you need it for light, and they can be inefficient during storms and gloomy days. Your solar energy system needs batteries if you plan to fully depend on solar energy to power your home. Batteries are one of the most expensive components of your system. Unlike solar panels, they do not wear out and need careful maintenance to lengthen their lives. Comparing wind power versus solar power, wind will keep generating electricity at night and during storms as long as there is enough wind. Many people use both in residential systems. Wind is produced as the sun heats the earth unevenly due to the Earth's rotation and geographic features. Warm air rises and creates low pressure areas, while cold air sinks to create high pressure areas. Air molecules typically move from high pressure to low ones, creating a phenomenon we experience as wind. Here are some of the advantages of wind power. First, wind is a type of clean energy. First off, how does wind energy work? It starts with a turbine that the wind turns as it blows. The wind's kinetic energy turns a generator in the structure that creates electricity. Modern wind turbines are extremely efficient at turning even light breezes into electricity. One of the advantages of wind energy is that it is a clean energy, meaning that it doesn't emit greenhouse gases when generating electricity. Your carbon footprint is the total of all gases like carbon dioxide, methane, and nitrous oxide that result from burning fossil fuels. If you can burn less fossil fuel for energy, replacing it with clean renewable energy like from the wind, you can reduce your carbon footprint. The second advantage is wind is a renewable resource. Another advantage of the wind energy is that it is renewable energy. It comes from wind, which is naturally occurring resource that doesn't get used up. How is green energy different from renewable energy? In addition to coming from an unlimited source, it does not produce greenhouse gases. In these ways, wind energy is similar to solar energy. A third advantage is that wind power has a low operating cost. Because wind power is a renewable energy source, there is no ongoing expense to acquire fuel. Once the wind turbine is installed, the only real cost is maintenance. As the world decarbonizes electricity generation in the future, wind is a clean, renewable, and low-cost option. A fourth advantage is that wind turbines save space. Another factor in the wind power pros and cons equation is the fact that it's space efficient and fits well with other land uses. Wind turbines can be spread across fields with enough space between them to be productive. Because they are elevated off the ground, the space below them is open for other uses like farming. The last advantage is that wind power generation promotes domestic economic growth. Harnessing wind power is economically beneficial beyond wind energy being inexpensive to produce. It relies on a local resource and creates local jobs. Investment in wind power is growing. In the last 10 years, wind generation capacity has increased 30%. Utility scale wind plants across 41 states have created more than 100,000 jobs in the US. So, how exactly does wind power work? A wind turbine turns wind energy into electricity using the aerodynamic force from the rotor blades, which work like an airplane wing or a helicopter rotor blade. When wind flows across the blade, the air pressure on one side of the blade decreases. The difference in air pressure across the two sides of the blade creates both lift and drag. The force of the lift is stronger than the drag, and this causes the rotor to spin. The rotor connects to the generator either directly if it's a direct drive turbine, or through a shaft and a series of gears that speed up the rotation and allow for a physically smaller generator. This translation of aerodynamic force to rotation of a generator creates electricity. We must consider both wind energy's advantages and disadvantages when weighing the benefits of this renewable energy source. Indeed, there are disadvantages to wind power, such as wind turbines can be dangerous to some wildlife. Wind turbines can be fatal to wildlife. Both birds and bats collide with them, and turbines interfere with bat sonar navigation. Certain species with low reproductive rates are more impacted, as are migratory birds. But researchers are investigating innovative ways to reduce the danger to wildlife. Second, wind turbines can be noisy. Wind turbines create both aerodynamic noise of the blades slicing through the air and mechanical noise of the power generating machine in them. The noise can affect wildlife, but is generally not a factor unless a viewer is standing nearby. Finally, third, wind power is limited by location. Wind power won't work everywhere. You need areas where wind blows strong and steady to make the investment worthwhile. Even with ideal locations in coastal areas, hills, and open fields where the wind is especially strong, it doesn't blow all the time. Energy generation slows or stops when the wind slows or stops, a concept known as intermittency. Hydropower, or hydroelectric power, is one of the oldest and largest sources of renewable energy, which uses the natural flow of moving water to generate electricity. Hydropower currently accounts for 28.7% of total U.S. renewable electricity generation and about 6.2% of the total U.S. electricity generation. In fact, all but two states, Delaware and Mississippi, use hydropower for electricity, some more than others. For example, in 2020, about 66% of the state of Washington's electricity came from hydropower. So how does a dam work? The theory is to build a dam on a large river that has a large drop in elevation. The dam stores a lot of water behind it in the reservoir. Near the bottom of the dam wall, there is a water intake. Gravity causes it to fall through the penstock inside the dam. At the end of the penstock, there is a turbine propeller, which is turned by the moving water. The shaft from the turbine goes up to the generator, which produces the power. Power lines are connected to the generator that can carry electricity to your home and elsewhere. The water continues past the propeller through the trail race into the river past the dam. Geothermal resources are reservoirs of hot water that exist or are human-made at varying temperatures and depths below Earth's surface. Wells ranging from a few feet to several miles deep can be drilled into underground reservoirs to tap steam and very hot water that can be brought to the surface for use in a variety of applications, including electricity generation, direct use, and heating and cooling. In the United States, most geothermal reservoirs are in the western states. There are several benefits to geothermal energy, including it is a renewable energy source. The heat flowing from Earth's interior is continually replenished by the decay of naturally occurring radioactive elements and will remain available for billions of years. It has a consistent base load. That is, geothermal power plants produce electricity consistently and can run essentially 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, regardless of weather conditions. It is entirely a domestic source of energy. U.S. geothermal resources can be harnessed for power production without importing fuel. Geothermal power plants are small and compact. They use less land per gigawatt hour than comparable capacity coal, wind, and solar photovoltaic power stations. It is a clean energy source, meaning modern closed-loop geothermal power plants emit no greenhouse gases and have a life cycle emissions 4 times lower than photovoltaic and 6 to 20 times lower than natural gas. Geothermal power plants consume less water on average over the lifetime energy output than most conventional electricity generation technologies. At a geothermal power plant, wells are drilled 1 or 2 miles deep into the earth to pump steam or hot water to the surface. You're most likely to find one of these power plants in an area that has a lot of hot springs, geysers, or volcanic activity, because these are places where the earth is particularly hot just below the surface. Here's how a geothermal plant works. Hot water is pumped from deep underground through a well under high pressure. When the water reaches the surface, the pressure is dropped, which causes the water in turn into steam. The steam spins a turbine, which is connected to a generator that produces electricity. The steam cools off in cooling tower and condenses back into water. The cooled water is then pumped back into Earth to begin the process again. We will now take a look at several of the biofuels being considered for energy sources, including ethanol, biodiesel, and biogas. Biofuels are liquid fuels produced from renewable biological sources, including plants and algae. Biofuels offer a solution to one of the challenges of solar, wind, and other alternative energy sources. These energy sources have incredible potential to reduce our dependence on fossil fuels and yield environmental and economic benefits. But many of these sources have a limitation. They can't replace liquid fuels such as jet fuel, gasoline, and diesel fuel that are critical to our transportation needs. That's where biofuels could help. Ethanol is a renewable fuel made from various plant materials collectively known as biomass. More than 98% of U.S. gasoline contains ethanol to oxygenate the fuel. Typically, gasoline contains E10 or 10% ethanol and 90% gasoline, which reduces air pollution. Ethanol is available as E85 or flex fuel, which can be used in flexible fuel vehicles designed to operate on any blend of gasoline and ethanol up to 83%. Another blend, E15, is approved for use in model year 2001 and newer light-duty vehicles. There are several steps involved in making ethanol available as a vehicle fuel. First, biomass feedstocks are grown, collected, and transported to an ethanol production facility. Feedstocks are converted to ethanol at the production facility and then transported to a fuel terminal or end user by rail, truck, or barge. E10 is sourced from the fuel terminals, where E85 is sourced from a terminal or directly from an ethanol production facility. E15 is available from fuel terminals or through a blender pump dispenser that draws from E10 and E85 tanks at a station. In the United States, 94% of ethanol is produced from the starch or in corn grain. Energy is required to turn any raw feedstock into ethanol. Ethanol produced from corn demonstrates a positive energy balance, meaning that the process of producing ethanol fuel does not require more energy than the amount of energy contained in the fuel itself. Biodiesel is a renewable, biodegradable fuel manufactured domestically from vegetable oils, animal fats, or recyclable restaurant grease. Biodiesel meets both the biomass-based diesel and overall advanced biofuel requirements of the Renewable Fuel Standard. Renewable diesel is distinct from biodiesel. Biodiesel is a liquid fuel often referred to as B100, pure, or neat biodiesel in its unblended form. Like petroleum diesel, biodiesel is used to fuel compression ignition engines. Biodiesel performance in cold weather depends on the blend of biodiesel, the feedstock, and the petroleum diesel characteristics. In general, blends with smaller percentages of biodiesel perform better in cold temperatures. Typically, number 2 diesel and B5 up to 5% biodiesel perform about the same in cold weather. Both biodiesel and number 2 diesel have the same compounds that crystallize in very cold temperatures. In winter weather, fuel blenders and suppliers combat crystallization by adding a cold flow improver. For the best cold weather performance, users should work with their fuel provider to ensure the blend is appropriate. Biogas is produced after organic materials such as plant and animal products are broken down by bacteria in an oxygen-free environment, a process called anaerobic digestion. Biogas systems use anaerobic digestion to recycle these organic materials, turning them into biogas, which contains both energy and valuable soil products. After biogas is captured, it can produce heat and electricity for use in engines, microturbines, and fuel cells. Biogas can also be upgraded into biomethane, also called renewable natural gas or RNG, and injected into natural gas pipelines or used as vehicle fuel. The United States currently has 2,200 operating biogas systems across all 50 states and has the potential to add over 13,500 new systems. Tidal energy is produced by the surge of ocean waters during the rise and fall of tides. Tidal energy is a renewable source of energy. During the 20th century, engineers developed ways to use tidal movement to generate electricity in areas where there is significant tidal range, the difference in area between high tide and low tide. All methods use special generators to convert tidal energy into electricity. Tidal energy production is still in its infancy. The amount of power produced so far has been small. There are very few commercial-sized tidal power plants operating in the world. The first was located in Lorence, France. The largest facility is in Siwa Lake Tidal Power Station in South Korea. The United States has no tidal plants and only a few sites where tidal energy could be produced at a reasonable price. China, France, England, Canada, and Russia have much more potential to use this type of energy. Ocean wave energy, or just simply wave energy, is another type of ocean-based renewable energy source that uses the power of the waves to generate electricity. Unlike tidal energy, which uses the ebb and flow of the tides, wave energy uses the vertical movement of the surface water that produces tidal waves. Wave power converts the periodic up and down movement of the ocean waves into electricity by placing equipment on the surface of the ocean that captures the energy produced by the wave movement and converts this mechanical energy into electrical power. Wave energy is actually a concentrated form of solar power generated by the action of the wind blowing across the ocean surface. As the sun rays strike the Earth's atmosphere, they warm it up. Differences in the temperature of the air masses around the globe causes the air to move from the hotter regions to the cooler regions, resulting in winds. As the wind passes over the surface of the oceans, A portion of the wind's kinetic energy is transferred to the water below, generating waves. In fact, the ocean could be viewed as a vast storage collector of energy transferred by the sun to the oceans, with the waves carrying the transferred kinetic energy across the surface of the oceans. Then we could say that waves are actually a form of energy, and it is this energy, not water, that moves along the ocean surface. The theoretical annual potential of waves off the coasts of the United States is estimated to be as much as 2.64 trillion kilowatt hours, or the equivalent of about 64% of total U.S. utility scale electricity generation in 2021. Fuel cells can be used in a wide range of applications, providing power for applications across multiple sectors, including transportation, industrial, commercial, and residential buildings, and long-term energy storage for the grid in reversible systems. Fuel cells have several benefits over conventional combustion-based technologies currently used in many power plants and vehicles. Fuel cells can operate at higher efficiencies than combustion engines and can convert the chemical energy in the fuel directly to electrical energy with efficiencies capable of exceeding 60%. Fuel cells have lower or zero emissions compared to combustible engines. Hydrogen fuel cells only emit water, addressing critical climate challenges as there are no carbon dioxide emissions. There are also no air pollutants that create smog and health concerns at the point of operation. Fuel cells are quiet during operation as they have few moving parts. Fuel cells work like batteries, but they do not run or need recharging. They produce electricity and heat as long as fuel is supplied. A fuel cell consists of two electrodes, a negative electrode or anode, and a positive electrode or cathode, sandwiched around an electrolyte. A fuel, such as hydrogen, is fed to the anode and air is fed to the cathode. In a hydrogen fuel cell, a catalyst at the anode separates hydrogen molecules into protons and electrons, which take different paths to the cathode. The electrons go through an external circuit, creating a flow of electricity. The protons migrate through the electrolyte to the cathode, where they unite with oxygen and the electrons to produce water and heat. Nuclear energy is a form of energy released from the nucleus, the core of atoms, made up of protons and neutrons. This source of energy can be produced two ways: fission, when nuclei of atoms split into several parts, or fusion, when nuclei fuse together. Nuclear fission is a reaction when the nucleus of atoms split into two or smaller nuclei while releasing energy. Inside nuclear power plants, nuclear reactors and their equipment contain and control the chain reactions, most commonly fueled by uranium-235, to produce heat through fission. The heat warms the reactor's cooling agent, typically water, to produce steam. The steam is then channeled to spin turbines, activating an electric generator to create low-carbon electricity. There are several advantages and disadvantages to nuclear energy. Here are the 4 advantages to nuclear electricity. It's carbon-free electricity. It has a small land footprint. It has a higher output of power, and it is a very reliable source of energy. However, there are 4 very big disadvantages to nuclear energy as well. Uranium is technically non-renewable. There's only so much uranium in the Earth's crust. There are very high upfront costs to building a nuclear power reactor. Then there is the nuclear waste that is created from the process and what to do with it. And then finally, when there are malfunctions, they can be catastrophic, such as the Chernobyl incident in Russia back in the 1980s. A smart grid is an electricity network that uses digital and other advanced technologies to monitor and manage the transport of electricity from all generation sources to meet the varying electrical demands of end users. Smart grids coordinate the needs and capabilities of all generators, grid operators, end users, and electricity market stakeholders to operate all parts of the system as efficiently as possible, minimizing costs and environmental impacts while maximizing system reliability, resilience, flexibility, and stability. Most of the technologies involved have already reached maturity, and so tracking investments provides insights on levels of deployment. Clean energy transitions entail large increases in electricity demand, and the widespread rollout of variable renewables like wind and solar, placing greater demands on the power grids. Smart grid technologies can help to manage this transition while reducing the need for costly new grid infrastructure, and can also help to make grids more resilient and reliable. Energy efficiency is the use of less energy to perform the same task or produce the same result. Energy efficient homes and buildings use less energy to heat, cool, and run appliances and electronics, and energy efficient manufacturing facilities use less energy to produce goods. Energy efficiency is one of the easiest and most cost effective ways to combat climate change, reduce energy costs for consumers, and improve the competitiveness of U.S. businesses. Energy efficiency is also a vital component in achieving net zero emissions of carbon dioxide through decarbonization. At home, you can save money on energy bills by making energy efficient and weatherization upgrades, such as adding insulation, using LED lighting, and installing a heat pump to reduce your energy use and can improve comfort. Sustainable energy provides new opportunities for growth. It enables businesses to grow, generate jobs, and creates new markets. Children can study after dark, clinics can store life-saving vaccines, countries can grow more resilient, competitive economies. With sustainable energy, countries can leapfrog over the limits of the energy systems of the past and build clean energy economies of the future. The Sustainable Energy for All initiative is a multi-stakeholder partnership between governments, the private sector, and civil society. Launched by the UN Secretary General in 2011, it has three interlinked objectives to be achieved by 2030. First, ensure universal access to modern energy services. Second, double the global rate of improvement in energy efficiency. And third, double the share of renewable energy in the global energy mix. These objectives are complementary. Progress in achieving one can help with progress towards the others. Sustainable energy for all is an investment in our collective future. Today, transportation represents 28% of annual energy use in the United States, and on-road vehicles account for more than 82% of all transportation energy use. However, many factors are reshaping our transportation systems, including a growing population, the rise of new technologies, new employment and business models, the on-demand economy, and changing climate. Many of these shifts equitably and sustainably requires thorough investigation of all the interconnected pieces of our transportation system and assessment of how these pieces can be optimized for energy efficiency and other priorities. Enhancing efficiency of transportation sources can improve energy independence and economic and functional resilience in the transportation sector while reducing greenhouse gas and other emissions. Distributed and diverse energy production and utilization can enable transportation infrastructure to function even under extreme conditions, and energy efficiency and domestic energy production reduce the need for foreign energy sources. Like any new set of ideas, there are always initial barriers that must be hurdled in order to move forward. In this section, we discuss government subsidies and policy changes that need to occur in order for sustainability goals to be met. Subsidies are intended to protect consumers by keeping prices low, but they come at a high cost. Subsidies have sizable fiscal costs, including leading to higher taxes and borrowing or lower spending. They promote inefficient allocation of an economy's resources, which hinders growth. It encourages pollution and are not well targeted at the poor. Removing subsidies and using the revenue gain for better targeted social spending, reduction in inefficient taxes, and productive investments can promote sustainable and equitable outcomes. Fossil fuel subsidy removal would also reduce energy security concerns related to volatile fossil fuel supplies. The United States provides a number of tax subsidies to the fossil fuel industry as a means of encouraging domestic energy production. These include both direct subsidies to corporations as well as other tax benefits to the fossil fuel industry. Conservative estimates put U.S. direct subsidies to the fossil fuel industry at roughly $20 billion per year, with 20% currently allocated to coal and 80% to natural gas and crude oil. Renewable energy has grown rapidly in recent years, especially in the electricity sector, where renewables now account for the largest power capacity additions globally. However, renewables still account for just above 10% of final energy consumption, and the energy sector remains dominated by fossil fuels. Renewables need to increase further and faster to bring about an energy transition that achieves climate targets, ensures energy access for all, reduces air pollution, and improves energy security. There are several steps that could be taken to help facilitate this, such as stop subsidizing fossil fuels, which would reduce emissions significantly but would be difficult to enact. Provide more subsidies that promote renewable energy sources than just take the existing one, which would help offset the dependence on fossil fuels. Hold companies who damage the environment financially responsible for the damages they create. Redirect subsidies from fossil fuels to research and development of more efficient renewable energy sources. And reducing lending rates to compensate for the higher initial costs of investment would make renewable energy a less risky investment. There are numerous economic barriers to implementing renewable energy sources, including the high initial cost of investment and the perceived high payback period, where it takes longer to get your return on your investment. Many entrepreneurs have a more difficult time finding investors. Current power generation is based on fossil fuels and is in one direction to the point of consumption. Renewable energy would require a multi-directional grid infrastructure to compete. Cultural barriers include the not in my backyard or NIMBY argument, where people like the idea of the project, they just don't want it near them. As an individual, adding renewable energy to your existing home can be cost prohibitive, restricted by zoning laws, or your neighbors just may not like it. With the vast majority of subsidies going to fossil fuels, having a more level playing field would spur investment and innovation in renewables. To do this would require making renewable energy a larger portion of the energy supplied. Cap and trade would provide incentive to invest in renewable energy. Allowing private sector and institutional investors to invest in green bonds. A green bond is a type of fixed income instrument that is specifically earmarked to raise money for climate and environmental projects. You could also deregulate energy to allow for more competition. Decoupling the energy producers from any energy distributors would give the consumers options and create market-driven prices. As we look ahead, our goals must remain centered on sustainability. It is imperative to continue diversifying our energy sources to reduce reliance on fossil fuels and accelerate the adoption of renewables. This entails investing in research and development, fostering technological innovations, and creating an enabling policy environment. Furthermore, sustainable energy solutions should be produced with an emphasis on environmental stewardship, social responsibility, and economic viability.